and welcome back to the Expansion Room. By the end of today's episode, you will have a clear and embodied answer to one of the most powerful questions a human being could ever ask themselves. Who am I? And this is not because of what it is that you do in the world for work, but this is a question of who am I at the basic level, right? Not what we're expressing in the world in reference to our titles, our roles, or an identity that you have formulated in your life that is based on production. And so, let's begin. Last week on the Expansion Room, we named the identity trap, the way high achievers and leaders, entrepreneurs quietly let their roles or their titles or even their degrees that they hold become their entire self-identity or self-concept. And so today we move from naming that to building our way out of that. And this episode is the map. We are going to go into some sacred and sometimes uncomfortable parts of this conversation, but they are always transformative. The process of becoming is always a deliberate constructing of an identity that is rooted in soul, not just in titles, roles, or even success in the world. So whether you're in the middle of a transition yourself in your life or in your work, or standing at a threshold where you feel the anticipation of something new, or you're simply in a place of feeling this quiet pull towards something much more true, this is a conversation for you. So I will start with a little bit of something about me in reference to becoming, because that's what this episode is about. It's about becoming. And what a lot of people think maybe becoming looks like, and how it is connected to degrees or titles or roles or a certain level of success in the world. And we think of it as, I have arrived. You get to a point in your career or your success where there is a destination that you're trying to get to. At least that's the way most of us were taught or raised, that there is a place that we're working towards. And once you get there, it's going to be everything that you can imagine. And so for me, becoming has looked nothing like what I had imagined it would be or what people told me it would look like. I never could have predicted that I would be sitting here, for instance, hosting a podcast. That was never in even the back of my mind as an idea of being something I would do or even want to do, especially as a more introverted person. But coming out of the pandemic, and if you've watched old episodes or previous episodes, I've talked about my history of being a therapist. I've been a licensed therapist for quite some time, more than 2 decades. And in the pandemic, like most therapists, I was slammed with a lot of extra clients during that time. And but being home, of course, and not doing much else, but that it afforded me the opportunity to do some thinking. And coming out of that pandemic, I came out of the pandemic with a vision for my practice and what I wanted, or at least what I thought I wanted at that time. I was going to move from being a solo private practice to a group private practice. So if you don't know how that model works, I had been for a long time working as just an individual therapist in a practice, seeing people on my individual caseload. And to move to a group practice means that you're hiring other people, other therapists who are licensed or on their way to licensure, and then bringing in more clients and building up their caseload. So this was going to be, and the vision was for it to be a small group practice model. And for me, it sounded like the next logical step. Several of my colleagues and friends who were also therapists were already moving in that direction. And so in my mind, it made complete sense that this would be the next step for me to follow. And I spent, I would say, we all kind of came out of the lockdowns, say in 2021. 2022, I think we got the official word that the pandemic was quote unquote over. And it was 2022 that I started to make this shift. And I worked at it for a good couple of years. It was a good 2-year period that this was my goal. And for me, it never took off. I could not find the right therapist for my practice, or for the therapists that I did find, or the influx of clients to fill their caseloads. And for a while, I was dumbfounded by it first, and then really annoyed, frustrated, and eventually grew resentful about it because I couldn't understand what was going on and why it wasn't working for me. And to be honest, I really, after putting in so much real time energy and resources to the process, I really got to a place where I was more than frustrated, or like a friend of mine likes to say, salty about it. And one day, after just saying to myself, okay, I am not going to put any more effort into doing this. I'm going to just move with what I have, and go forward. I realized something else that I had not put as much effort into in coming out of the pandemic was the quiet nudge in the back of my mind to step more firmly into coaching and coaching small business owners who already had a level of success in their business, but felt like there was something missing inwardly or spiritually. I had not put as much effort towards that. I added coaching into what I was already doing, almost like when you have a full-time job and then you get a part-time job on the side, or what people like to call a side hustle. Coaching was kind of my side hustle for those couple of years. I was doing a little bit here and there, but I wasn't putting as much effort into it. And one day, something in my awareness shifted around that. I realized that I had built this dream of a group practice that was not actually mine. I realized, and I think it was a day I was coming out of meditation, and there's always so much clarity when you meditate on a regular basis. Sometimes for me, I've noticed that I'll have a meditation. It's a really good meditation. There's quiet, there's peace, there's joy, there's love. And once I step out of the meditation, I get these aha moments, which is very interesting. I don't always get them in the meditation. So I think it was a day that I got an aha moment after a meditation. And I realized I wanted the group practice model for me because I thought it was the next logical step. And I was a therapist, so that should be the thing that I want to go for. And it turned out that that was not it at all. I was going for that because someone else said it would be a great idea, basically. And what I really wanted to do and what really got my engine running on a regular basis was coaching sessions, particularly those one-on-one coaching sessions that I do with a person and help them to shift something in their life, in their identity, and therefore in their business going forward. That's the thing that was lighting me up, but I was not giving attention to. It was somehow rooted in me as something that I loved doing, but I think I thought that it was not in line with who I was supposed to be. Now, when I look at it, it is perfectly in line with who I am becoming. And so that realization almost 2 years ago really made me pause and start to shift how I move, how I see myself, how I identify myself, even how I will introduce myself at networking events. And so more and more, I'm seeing myself stepping into these roles outside of being a therapist and not letting those roles completely define who I am. Because at a higher consciousness level, I know who I am in a different way than in roles. And so for me to work with conscious leaders and soulpreneurs, entrepreneurs, and creatives is so important. And in helping them to move forward in their own businesses gives me such great joy and helping me to feel good about what it is I have to express and offer in the world. That desire in me is real and it is mine, and it feels so much more authentic than pushing a big wheel up a hill. And so as I have now set aside that old version of myself as the therapist moving into a group practice, I finally gave myself permission to pivot fully this year and to offer what really makes my heart sing. And that is the coaching work, expanding on that, as well as this podcast, which still surprises me sometimes when I realize how much fun I am having offering these episodes for you all. And when I meet a guest who I feel like is going to really offer something fantastic to my audience. Those things really light me up these days. And so I'm leaning more into that instead of what I think or thought, rather, that I should be doing. So that is for me like my story and how my evolution is going. And I'm still in my evolution. So the things that I oftentimes talk about on this show are part of the things that I'm experiencing, exploring, and moving through as well. And so together, I hope that you realize that we are on a very similar journey. And that maybe I'm just a couple of steps ahead of you sometimes, right? So this is what becoming looks like. It's not a straight line. It's not even a clean pivot. Sometimes it just looks like you're working at something in one direction and you lift your head and realize at some point, oh, I think I'm moving in the wrong direction. Or there's something else that's tugging at me that I need to give attention to. That is what it could look like, simply. And so what becoming actually means is something probably different for each person. And so when you think about it, have you ever confused becoming rather, with achieving something that you think will take you to the next level in your life or in your business, that when you finally get there, that you will feel like yourself? If you have, you're not alone. Most of us have felt that way. Most of us have been conditioned that way. And really, it's a myth that this idea of where we're trying to get to is a destination. Becoming is an unfolding that happens in our lives ongoing, as long as you are alive. And the whole idea is to be present for that unfolding, not what culture tells us or conditioning tells us. But it's really about allowing yourself to be fully present for who you are or who you are becoming. We have spoken and unspoken rules about becoming. And if you think about either the degrees, the certifications, the licenses, the roles, the titles that we are striving for, none of them are really designed to help us know ourselves in a greater sense of the word. And when you arrive, you don't usually find yourself really there. It's in those moments, and oftentimes it happens to people somewhere between the age of 35 and say 50, where we have the what is called the midlife crisis. And you wake up from these roles that you're in and the titles that you've taken on, and realize that you've been performing for much of it, producing for much of it, but not always fully in a space where you're completely yourself. Because to show up completely as yourself means that you risk not being fully embraced, fully accepted. And that can be very scary. So instead of questioning the premise that we are all conditioned with, that it's going to be great when we get to the end, because that's the goal, most of us, when we find that we don't feel that way at the goal's end, we set a new destination and try to create a new identity, and we start running again. So here is what I've learned, that there is a profound difference between an identity as performance and an identity as embodiment. Identity as performance is what we have all learned through conditioning. Identity as embodiment is who we need to step into. It's the who we are becoming. When you can be in the space of becoming your true self, everything that you then express and create in the world comes from that true embodiment, that true identity of who you are, and is so much more enlivening, refreshing, authentic. You do away with identifying with your credentials and titles and outcomes, and you step into this feeling or this sense of being just because you are, right? Just because you are. And that's all that's actually really needed. And you can do away with performance for performance sake. You will then step into this embodiment and do things because it is coming from your true nature. It is the moment by moment, in person or in the moment experience that lights you up. And that is what drives you, right? Not this idea or desire to be something for others' approval. It is rooted more into the person who you actually are. And it is literally something that you inhabit. And as you are becoming, you'll feel the difference between when you've stepped back a little bit into your old identity, into performance mode, into outcomes mode. And you'll also feel the difference when you step forward into your more authentic and true self that you want to inhabit. You'll feel it in your nervous system. You'll feel it in your body. And here's the part that no one tells you about in reference to becoming. It is not linear. It does not follow a roadmap. And it does not always look like progress, as we would call it from the outside, right? Sometimes becoming your true and authentic self looks like releasing something that you've been working towards for years. Sometimes it looks like starting over in a direction that makes no logical sense to anyone else who's watching. Sometimes it looks like stillness when everyone else is moving. And that is okay. You have to move with alignment that comes from the inside. And it can be uncomfortable. This shift has not been all rainbows and unicorns for me, especially that 2 years that I was trying to shift in a direction that wasn't mine. But it got a lot more easeful when I realized, oh, I need to be moving in the direction of what lights me up. And in this space, even though it's sometimes uncomfortable, sometimes I hit some obstacles in my path, it is still the direction that I know that I want to be going. Because the space between who I have been and the space of where I'm going is oftentimes called like this liminal space by a lot of psychologists and mystics. There's this space between where sometimes I do step back into that role of therapist as identity, and then other times where I'm fully into the space of becoming. And I don't know what else this new identity and space has for me. Yes, I am a podcaster now. Yes, I am a transformational coach. I don't know what else is out there for me, but I now feel so open to whatever presents itself, and that I'm confident that I can step forward into, because the person who I am is open. The person who I am now is in a space of receiving. I invite you to also become a person who invites new and more open opportunities into your life to just see where you can expand to. This is not a space that we are taught to tolerate, right? We are always supposed to be focused on an end goal. But when you allow yourself to just be who you are, so much more can be presented to you in a way that reduces stress and tension and hustle and production. All right. So thinking about this idea of becoming in your own life, allow yourself to notice what comes up when you think about letting go of the thing or things that you've been doing that you know no longer serve you, but you have not yet stepped forward into the thing or things that really light you up. The conversation usually goes like this: I hate my job. I hate getting up and going into this job, whatever the job is, doing this thing. Or maybe you've built a business on one brand, but it no longer lights you up. In fact, you hate getting out of bed in the morning to do it, right? So that's where the conversation starts. I love the next part of the conversation is I love doing such and such, but I can't make money doing that. And we need money to live, right? That is the thing that holds many people back. Examine what comes up for you when you talk about those two things. And see if you can notice whether or not the thing that lights you up gives you a sense of a tug or a pull towards it in a way that makes you go, maybe I could step into this just a little bit. Maybe it can be the thing that becomes your side hustle, as they call it, your part-time thing, until you build the confidence and build the resources so that you can step out of this other thing. That willingness to be in the in-between without forcing a resolution is not weakness. It's one of the most courageous things that you can do as a leader of any kind. Of any kind. It is that in-between space that I find myself in right now, and I'm moving forward through. Letting go of old identities or what felt like it was authentic to you then or at a time in your life that it worked for you is okay. There are activities and career paths and even relationships that are only supposed to be with us for a season. I don't know what's ahead of me at the so-called end of this journey in my expansion, and neither will you. But there's some excitement in not knowing and not holding yourself to a specific identity that limits you. So you don't want to make the mistake of stepping out of your old identity and creating a new one that becomes a new cage. So there are 3 roots that I want you to consider. Values your energy and your nervous system as your identity compass as you move forward. And I'll put this question out to you. What if your body knows who you are already and your mind has just been overriding it with who you think you should be? And so I invite you to sit with that question. Because if it lands anywhere in your body and it resonates, then it is probably the beginning of asking yourself the deeper question, who am I really? We spend so much time in our lives in our head. We're analyzing, we're strategizing, we're figuring things out as we move forward towards whatever the goal is in our lives. And the mind, being a powerful tool, can keep us locked in that space. But our body, our nervous system, is the bigger compass. It's the reliable compass. especially when it has been conditioned to really allow you to gain information from what comes up from you. Not role-based identity, but really authentic identity. So let's look at these three roots because they come from your inner experience, and they align very well with what I've talked about on the show before as the alignment triangle: mind, body, and spirit. And all of those really gather in our bodies, in our central nervous system, ultimately. It's integration, essentially, is what that is. And so it gives you access to your most grounded, authentic, and powerful self. And so these three roots I invite you to take into your life and begin to practice so that you build an identity from soul. So the first root is your core values, right? Not the values that you list in your resume or in a workbook when you went to a workshop like 4 or 5 years ago. These are your core values. They are alive in you right now, usually just beneath the surface, just beneath all the performance, productions, and roles that we carry. And so what genuinely matters to you is rooted in your core values. When no one else is around or no one else is looking, what do you value? What makes you feel your most authentic self, more like yourself? Those answers are pointing to the direction of your core values. And when you are actually living from them, you become this foundational person that no external circumstance can change or shake, right? That is your true authentic self. The second root is energy. What is your energy? Pay attention to what expands you and what contracts you. The activities and the relationships in your life, even the environments in your life and conversations and entertainment even that you take in that leave you feeling alive, open and expansive and clear. And then the things that make you feel contracted, depleted, drained, disconnected. Your energy does not lie. Never, ever does it lie. And so if you're always in tune with your energy, in your engagements with other humans, in your spaces that you move in and out of, and in the work that you do or expression that you offer to the world, you'll always know whether or not it is something for you. It always gives you honest feedback. And so when I finally allowed myself to acknowledge that building a group practice was making me feel contracted and that coaching and podcasting was giving me life, giving me energy, that was a big aha moment and shift for me. It allowed me to step more readily into that and accept it. The third root is your nervous system, which we talk a fair bit of an amount of about nervous system on this show, especially how to re-regulate a dysregulated nervous system. And so this is where my background as a therapist and somatic practitioner comes into play, all right? Your nervous system holds the memories of every version of yourself that you have ever been in your life, every version. And it knows the difference between safety and performance, between genuine alignment and a conditioned response. And so when you are living from your true identity, your nervous system settles. It knows it and it relaxes. There is a quality of ease in the midst even of a challenge. When you are performing a role that no longer fits you, your nervous system signals misalignment. And when you are actually in alignment with what roles you want to step into and the identity of who you really are, your nervous system hums beautifully and balanced. Learning to read those signals, to use somatic awareness is as a truth teller, is a beautiful practice that you can do every day. So here's an invitation for you this week. Check in with all three of these roots. Ask yourself, am I living from my actual values right now, or from a value that you feel like you should be living from? What is expanding me and what is contracting me? And what is my body and my nervous system telling me in quiet moments when I'm not performing for anyone? Mind, body, and spirit, all three in alignment. And that is where your true identity lives. So how do you build from the inside out rather than outside in? This is where a soul-led life and a soul-led business begins. So what would you do differently in your business or in your life or in your relationships if your identity were aligned with who you really are? As you think about that question, allow the answers to surface and bubble to the top all by themselves. This is not a mental thought process, right? This is an embodied process. So think about that. We would all probably do various different things in our lives moving forward if that were the case. We would probably build differently and show up differently, speak differently if that were the case, and say yes to fewer things that we don't want and a wholehearted yes to the things we do want, right? And not shy away from the things we do want. I have never met a person who made the hard decision to shift their work or their expression in the world or step out of a relationship that was no longer serving them to do exactly what they really want to do. I've never heard them say that was the wrong decision. So when your identity is no longer tied to outcomes, something profoundly shifts within you. And you stop needing the results to validate who you truly are. And that becomes freedom. That particular quality of freedom changes everything. This is what I mean when I say that decision is frequency. Every decision that you make is either coming from fear or lack, or it's coming from a space of who you really are, alignment, truth, a grounded sense of who you really truly are. And the decisions come, when decisions come from alignment, your whole life shifts, your whole life changes. So not just the work that you do in your work, but in the world, but your relationships too. There's a settledness about it, a clarity, a groundedness about making decisions in that frequency of soul led frequency. And so once you learn to feel that difference in your body, in your nervous system, in your mind, it becomes something that's more easy for you to step into. It becomes something that you start to seek out on a more regular basis. And the more you put your attention to that new authentic self, the less and less you feed the old identity. And eventually it falls away completely. You move from moving from outside in to starting to move from inside out to create a more authentic life and soul-led business. This is the goal. It is genuinely how you want to be moving in the world. It is the difference from living from a space of fear and into a space of love. So think about, as you step into a new day or a new week, how you want to move, right? Paying attention to the energy that you are experiencing as you do your day-to-day tasks, paying attention to your core values and noticing whether or not they align with what you're doing. And how is your nervous system feeling in the moments that you do a certain task or step into a certain space or connect with other humans? Do you feel aligned? That's the key there. Are you feeling aligned, or is there just a little bit of feeling off, not quite right? Or are alarm bells going off that you maybe have not been paying attention to over time, right? And so you want to be checking in with yourself before you do any strategy, before you make any decision. Check in with yourself. What does this look like in practical terms? It looks like pausing. And it could just be for a couple of seconds or a couple of minutes. But you take a pause before you make your next major life decision or business decision. You take a pause before you answer a question that someone's asked you. You take a pause before you decide to do the next step of something. And just wonder for yourself in that moment, is this authentic to me? To me. And it might not be. And you might have to make certain decisions that feel like they disappoint other people. And that's okay. That's okay. You have to give yourself permission sometimes to do less or to pivot, to change how you engage the world, the people in your lives, your career, your work, your business. You have to give yourself permission. From your own inner authority, you have to give yourself permission to do what feels true. It looks like showing up as your true self in the workspace, in your business, in your relationships, even on social media, all right? Showing up as your true self. That's what it could look like. When you start to step into your true identity, it will become easier and easier to do. Here's what I know for certain, that after more than 2 decades of working with clients and doing my own inner work, strategy without alignment is exhausting. It's part of hustle culture, and we are letting go of hustle culture. right? But when you know who you are and you move from who you are, genuinely rooted in your own values, your own energy, and your own nervous system is regulated, you take the next right steps always, always to this new space of becoming more authentically you. It has to do more with you stopping in your tracks and noticing when you are going in the wrong direction and being brave to pivot in that moment to the right direction. Know that that is a safe space for you to do that, to do so. It's that moment of realization, oh, I'm going in the wrong direction, and allowing yourself to pivot right there in the moment, making whatever adjustments you need to step more authentically into who you truly are. So becoming is not an event. It is a practice that unfolds. And the most courageous thing that you can do as a parent, a leader, an entrepreneur, a human being is to commit to that practice. And being in the in-between space may feel uncertain, but know that it's not permanent and you are still moving towards that more authentic self. You are not starting over, you are starting from your truth. And that is an entirely different thing. So, thank you for coming with me on this journey of this 2-part series and I hope that it opened up something for you to feel in the depths that you are not alone and that this is not just theory, that you are really moving towards something new and more authentic in your life. And so if that is true and you want a real container of support, my Elevate program is a program that I created for that kind of level of support. It is soul first. It is built for leaders, healers, creatives, soulpreneurs who are done performing and really ready to become. If you're interested to learn more, just book an alignment call so that we can have a conversation. You'll find the link in the show notes below. And thank you for being here. Thank you for doing the work. Share this episode with someone who you think will really benefit from it. And I hope to meet you back here soon in the expansion room.